Good evening. Welcome to our State of the Church conversation for 2020. My name is Karen Kirkpatrick. I'm senior pastor here at Ames First United Methodist Church. And you don't have to be a member to be watching this. This is very open and transparent. It's an update of where we've been this year and where it looks like we may be going. We normally do this presentation in person so that we can have a conversation, but COVID has certainly shut that down this year. Now tonight you're going to hear several presentations from our leadership. Most are videos. I'm the only presenter live tonight. Sharon Bowen, who is co-council chair, is sitting with me and watching the chat. Mike Evans is up in the loft. We're the only three people in the building tonight. But the others have their presentations all taped and ready to go. If you have questions as we go along, please put those in the chat. Sharon is monitoring the chat. If it's a simple question that she can answer, she will. Otherwise, we're going to gather all of those questions and get them out to the appropriate team to have them answer those questions and put together an FAQ, frequently asked questions, to be published then so that everyone will have the answers. You can also send in your questions to the office, OFFICE, at FUMCAmes.org, and Deb will forward those to Sharon and get them to the right people. So let's begin tonight. Next slide, please, Mike. I want to remind you that the mission of the church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. That is the whole reason that we're here. And our own book of discipline, which is our covenant of how we live together, says that local churches, that would be us, local churches provide the most significant arenas through which disciple making occurs. So our main purpose is that disciple building piece. Our focus is the mission, and everything we do here needs to point to that mission. Next slide, please, Mike. So we just redid the mission statement last year, so it was easier to remember. And then we had several sermon series where we brought up the new mission, to make disciples of Jesus who serve beyond the walls. And that needs to be the focus then of everything we do as we seek this year to continue our realignment. Next slide, please. This year, we're adding a new piece to that mission statement. It's really nothing more than an identity statement that helps us focus as we work to realign our resources and our tasks and our programming. And that statement is that a reminder that we, in the church, we are faith formation partners here at First United Methodist. That is part of our purpose, and it is part of our identity. Next slide, please. Every year that I'm going to be serving you here and giving this State of the Church conversation, this slide is going to appear. It might be different colors, it might look differently, but it's going to say the same thing because what it says is critical. Engaging more adults in ministry supports the general mission of the church, which is to make disciples. When adults become growing disciples, then their children and their youth become more deeply engaged as well. Next slide, please. Now, this is the frame for our conversation this year. I'm going to spend just a few minutes with you to remind you about what we said last year, where we were, some of our starting points, especially if you haven't been able to be with one of these conversations before. We will then start on strategies for 2020 and give you some updates. Kevin's going to talk about spiritual formation and discipleship, and I will update you on discipleship ministries teams. I can't read my own writing. That's me. I'll talk about church systems and ministry balance. Matt Carney, who is the co-chair with Sharon Bowen, is going to talk then about mission and vision update. Bruce White will give us a financial summary. Matt will talk about what happened when COVID hit and how we responded to that. And then Kevin Henders, who is our lay leader for the remainder of this year, Kevin is going to be looking ahead to 2021. And that's important to Kevin, too, because he's going to be our new co-chair along with Sharon Bowen starting in January. So that's where we're going tonight. And let's get started then with the way we were, what we said last year. Next slide, please. I want to review first about what we know about this church, what we know about ourselves. We're highly relational, We have some strong leaders and personalities in this church, and that's both a good thing and a challenge at the same time. We have a lot of diverse backgrounds and theologies. We have a lot of people who believe a lot of different things, all still within the umbrella of United Methodist faith and practice. Lots of different life experiences and ages. We have a rich history of dedicated ministry, and particularly in service, and a connection with higher education and service in this church. We lend our building out to nonprofits for their ministries as well, so we're facilitating different kinds of ministry in our community. And because we are who we are, we have a global perspective on many things. Next slide, please. Now, you remember in 2017, I believe it was, you took a church assessment tool, we call that the CAT, and some of the key feedback pieces are still guiding us today. Focus on spiritual formation and discipleship, the power of the gospel to transform. Major changes are needed, and we've been working on those to regain a significant level of vitality and health. Clarification of purpose, and you're going to hear more about that today in some of our presentations. Focusing on a few things very well, and shifting from clergy staff-driven ministry to lay-led ministry in partnership with clergy and staff. These are key pieces that we'll be working on for the next several years. We are making progress. Next slide, please. This slide, I'm not going to read it. These are the goals from our 2019 Charge Conference for the year 2020. And this is what we said we were going to do last year. And you're going to see these again as we go through and update each status. And I'm going to, at this point now, turn it over to Kevin Henders, who's going to update the progress on our discipleship pathway, which is goal number 1 on that slide.
Well, as Karen just mentioned, developing a discipleship pathway was one of the 4 primary goals that we had as a church this last year. So our adult ministries team has taken on this task, and today we want to share with you a little bit of what we are calling our faith formation pathway, which is the same thing as discipleship pathway, but we changed the terminology just a little bit to kind of be in alignment with our mission and some of the strategies that we have in place this year. So as many of you know, there is no one clear path to developing your faith or discipleship. In fact, many times it might happen by accident, or it might happen in reverse of the process that we're going to talk about today. But the goal here is to provide us an example, a bit of a roadmap that will allow us, each one of us, to think a little bit about our faith journey and where we're at and how we can continue to develop it. So what we have in our faith formation pathway is 4 steps: engage, connect, equip, and send. So starting on the left-hand side, the engage is ways in which we inspire and invite others to walk through our doors. How do we help them feel more comfortable to come see what's going on at their church and potentially learn more about it? The connect phase is ways in which we encourage visitors, members, those who have already decided to walk through our doors, to get involved, develop relationships with others already involved in our church, and just feel God's presence. So it's about getting connected, learning, getting more comfortable with the surroundings of our church and some of the things that we have going on. The third step is the equip phase, and this is really where we get a bit more intentional about developing our faith and building the confidence in a way that will allow us to move to the 4th step, which is about sending and serving and being that disciple and serving both inside of the church and beyond the walls. This next slide is meant to give you a few examples, and by all means, they're just a few of the examples. There are a lot of other things going on in the church, and I'm sure I missed some really important things here, but just wanted to give you an idea. So starting again on the left-hand side, in the engage phase, a couple of examples. If some of you remember a year ago during the 4th of July parade, and it's held every year in downtown Ames, we were very intentional about inviting the public to come to our church, that even if they just needed to cool off, get inside the air conditioning, get a bottle of water, a glass of water, whatever it was. But while they were in the area, to stop by and utilize our great resource that we have downtown. I think likewise, the United Methodist Women Holiday Fair, and maybe even more specifically what they've done this last fall with their Holiday Fair of Light and the bake sales and so forth that they've been having in conjunction with the downtown farmers market. I think any time that we can connect and collaborate with other things going on in the downtown community of Ames, that's a great opportunity for us to invite people to our church and see what's going on inside of our church. Another area that I probably need to get a little better at is sharing Facebook posts. For any of you on Facebook, if you're not following Ames First United Methodist Church, we would encourage you to do so. Nicole puts some really great stuff out there, and once it's there, like it and share those Facebook posts. They're not doing any good if we're not sharing them beyond our direct community and letting other people know about some of the great things that they might want to be involved with and hear about. The connect phase, as mentioned earlier, is really about just developing relationships, and you can do that in a variety of ways at Ames First United Methodist Church. It could be as simple as going to coffee hour after church. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide that again sometime soon. Getting involved with our softball team, taking a connection class that Pastor Karen has that is really about helping people learn more about the different options at our church. Both United Methodist women and men have some great activities and small groups that allow people to come in non-threatening environments and just get to know each other and get involved. The last bullet point there is serving on a committee. I know I have always felt that when I serve on a committee with a group of people, I get to know them better. You're kind of working together for a common cause. So it's a great opportunity to develop relationships. In the equip phase, as I mentioned, that's being a bit more intentional about actually developing your faith. And I believe, again, we have some great resources here, whether that is just coming to worship service, whether that be in person or online. For the younger kids going to Sunday school, or adults getting involved with Coffee Talk or Faith and Reason, life groups, Bible study, young adults. We have a variety of things going on in our church that allows people in their own way to develop their faith. And as I mentioned, that's what builds the confidence for us to go out and serve more, either inside the walls or beyond the walls, whether that be through the Appalachian Service Project. I know a lot of people in our church are involved in community missions, whether that be Good Neighbor, United Way, helping deliver Meals on Wheels, Food at First. Those types of things are all great opportunities. Teaching and leading classes is another great opportunity to extend your knowledge and be a disciple. Being a confirmation mentor, visiting homebound or hospitalized, serving funerals, lots and lots of ways that we can be disciples and serve others. So as you review this list, I think many of you would probably agree that we do a great job on the middle two categories as a church. There's so many things that I don't even have listed here that people can participate in. I think I would challenge our church to think about the two outside edges. First of all, on the left-hand side, how do we be more proactive in inviting people into our church? How do we be more proactive in opening our doors and letting people see some of the great things that we have going on? And on the far right-hand side, how do we organize a bit more as a church to find ways to serve both inside of the walls and maybe even more importantly, beyond the walls in our community that we operate in? So again, these are just some examples. There is more detail to this. If you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into this and thinking about how you can extend your faith formation, I would encourage you to reach out to Pastor Nikki or Jane Edwards or anybody on our adult ministries committee right now. to learn a little bit more and maybe analyze yourself a little bit more and think about where you're at in our faith formation pathway. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. If we can have the next slide, please, Mike. I want to go into the second goal, and that is really making that shift from clergy-driven, clergy-centric, to clergy-lay partnerships, and shifting our systems in the church so that really the laity, this is their church, and this is your church, and so that's the shift that we're trying to make. And remember, as we engage adults in hands-on ministries, and that can be anything from serving outside, as Kevin said, serving inside, we're building leadership, we're helping the disciples grow deeper in their faith. Next slide, please. This is going to make your eyeballs roll in the back of your head, so I'm going to ask you just to step back a little bit and look at the big picture. It's a busy chart, but I wanted to show you one of the tools that we used 2 years ago to make this shift and then update you. This is a Venn diagram. Now, a Venn diagram is a diagram that shows all possible logical relations between a finite connection of different sets. So in other words, there's lots of overlap areas. Each of the larger circles represents an age-level ministry. And the strategy that we were using, once we figured out that there were many places that were being overlapped, the strategy is to put together collaborative teams and work together on those overlap areas rather than duplicating, which is not very effective, and rather than setting hard boundaries that says this is my sandbox, this is your sandbox, but what can we do together, because we're always better together. So if you look at it from the big picture, the big circles are the age ministries, the blue boxes are the teams of people that are lay-led, so you have youth ministries, adult ministries, and children, family, and intergenerational ministries working together, all have overlap areas. And then I've added something this year. You'll notice there's some green pieces, and I wanted to share with you just a little bit of the strategy that we're using our staff to facilitate and tie together different areas of overlap outside of the strict discipleship areas. So if you look at Pastor Nikki at the top, she's a liaison for the adult ministries team, but she also liaisons with member care. Now, member care took a step forward this year and began to organize, especially under COVID, but even prior to that, they organized last year to do visitation ministry again, so that the membership is beginning to care for the membership. That's that lay-led aspect. Nikki, also liaisoning with the adult ministries, knows that that's equipping those adults to continue to go deeper in ministry and in faith. She's also liaison for missions. And how can she connect missions then with the equipping piece of the adult ministries so that they're collaborating rather than setting in their own little teams? I liaison with the discipleship ministry team, which is the oversight for all age ministries in discipling ministries, but I also liaison with the worship team. So this year, for example, we set up a sermon series planning team. And what that means is we've got people from worship, people from discipleship, Nikki and myself, who look at the overview of where we're going in our worship sermon series and coordinate that so that we're sharing themes and sermon series with all the different age-level ministries. So now we've got a coordinated effort not only in Sunday school classes and youth ministries, but also in worship as well. So wherever we can find places to integrate and collaborate, those are two key pieces. They help us also pinpoint where we might effectively leverage our staff and our resources and then create more opportunities for people to get involved in the ministry of the church in many different ways. Next slide, please. I want to give you a quick update on the 3 age ministries before I turn this over to Matt. The adult ministries team, as Kevin shared with you, has done outstanding work on the faith formation pathway. They've also fleshed it out a little more in a more checkup chart that really is, when it's done, will be a good roadmap for looking at the programs that we don't have, looking at the programs that maybe we've duplicated, looking at steps that people may need depending on where they are, and that's really important work. We've had some shift on that team. That happens with teams from time to time. Jane Edwards is our interim chair for the rest of the year, and she's working with Pastor Nikki. The newcomer orientation and new member classes that we talked about last year, those are launched. In fact, our next newcomer is coming up in October. We now have pretty consistently 2 all-church studies each year, one in the fall and one at Lent. And this year, virtual rally day. COVID has done some funny things that's forced us kind of out of our box, and this was a really great idea to make videos so that people could come in and look at all the different ministries on their own time frame. One of the new pieces and part of the strategies of alignment in general is communications, and so we have this year in Adult Ministries new adult registration sheet, which will help us keep track of and follow up with our adults, be able to see who's engaged and if we have an increase in the people who are engaging and how often they engage. So that's a new communication and database tool. Next slide, please. Last year we talked about our youth ministry was running a little bit behind. We have hired Kim Heidemann. I am delighted to have Kim on board. She is sharp. She's doing good work. She has created a youth ministry team. They're now working pretty consistently together, and that team is making decisions on curriculum and directions. It also includes youth input. Youth are a little bit different than children or adults. You want them to have input, and you want them to be in charge of areas that's appropriate for them, but you don't want to burden them with all of the oversight necessities of a team. She's reshaping our youth ministries for more collaboration. Have you heard that word a lot tonight? Collaboration. More collaboration and mentoring partnerships with youth and leaders and other adults in the church. So she's reframing, redefining, and we're already seeing some good fruit come out of her work. So if you see Kim, or if you send her a little email and tell her, great job, because I think she is doing a great job. Next slide, please. One of the first areas to shift it came after we added the adult ministries, was children, family, and intergenerational ministries, or you'll hear us talk about CFIM. This is in response to a call that Nicole had, if you recall, that this is really the cutting edge of ministries, that especially families with children, young children, like to do things together, and they want that intergenerational interaction. And so this team is up and rolling. Started off with a lot of good mission and outreach. The team itself has people of all ages on the team, so there's a good representation of the different generations within the church. Now you got to remember, March, everything shut down, 100% shut down with COVID, and this team got their children's programming up and running within a week. That's phenomenal. They engaged multiple generations. We added Zoom opportunities during the week for the children and the families, drive-by pickups so that they could see their Sunday school teachers and at least wave to them. And right now they're working on hybrid plan to increase options for families, because some families aren't ready to come back face-to-face. Others are overwhelmed with schoolwork, which is now shifting back and forth. So back and forth, back and forth. Now, let me give you an example of what this collaboration looks like between these 3 areas. If you remember on that Venn diagram, confirmation is kind of an overlap between children and youth ministries. And I teach a class called Foundations, which parallels the confirmation. And so we're all working together on that. These 2 classes are now 100% online. We have a 100% online confirmation class. And with that, we gave an invitation for other churches to join us so that make good use of those resources. We have 2 additional confirmands who are not from this church, who are a part of our confirmation class. They'll be working with their own congregation and learning their church history, but the bulk of the teaching is being shared. And I have 16 additional adults in the Foundations for Christian Faith that come from 4 different churches, plus 11 of our own church members. That's the kind of collaboration beyond the walls that COVID has forced us to look at, and we're getting some good results with that. So I'm going to pass this on to Matt Carney, and he will take the next piece.
Hello, I'm Matt Carney. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Church Council, and I'd like to give you a brief update on a few items we've been working on this year. First is the church systems and ministry balance. At last year's State of the Church, we talked about getting a better balance between the laity activities and the church activities. And we've done a pretty good job over this year. The five items you see below are still all the items we're focused on. We've been trying to move laity into more leadership roles and giving them more direct control of the program and direction, and having the church clergy serve more as a facilitator and help develop those. And so that's been working pretty well. And the other thing we've been working on is trying to work on the communication between our different systems and make those efficient. So just an update there that we continue to work those, and those are still in progress, and we've done some pretty good things with those this year. The other thing I'd like to move into is talking about a vision. As stated before, you saw it was one of our goals for 2020, and we did form a team and we did work on that. And this is the update to that. So first we went off and we thought, well, who should be involved in this vision statement? So we had a large group, 20, 30 people were involved in this. It was a combination of laity from different leadership roles across the church, some of the staff members, and as well as our clergy came together. And we had several workshops to work on this and come up with a vision. So we wanted a diverse group to make sure we formed a good representative statement there. Before we got into the vision though, we had to start looking at our mission. So last year, at the 2019 Charge Conference, we approved a mission, and that mission was to make disciples of Jesus who serve beyond the walls. And again, that really represents our position here as a downtown church and what we want to do. And so with that in place, we first kind of took a quick reevaluation activity to understand what we're doing today and how we're doing it, and see if any of those activities or programs need to be realigned. And if so, then we would go and make some tweaks or change the direction or the activity or how we did the activity. And the backdrop to all that was our faith formation. Some of the pathways work that Kevin mentioned earlier is going to serve as kind of the glue for how we did that reevaluation. And so that's still something that is underway and we continue to work on. So with the mission understood and the mission in place from last year, we then turned our attention to the vision. How do you define the vision? How do you come up with a vision? Well, what we did was we posted this question to the group. What do you want FUMC to look like in 3 to 5 years? And if you go forward in 3 to 5 years and evaluated us, would we have met those goals? So that was the question. And we wanted to do that against the backdrop of a couple of stipulations. One, we wanted to be brief. A vision really serves no purpose if no one can remember it, or if no one can articulate why it is or what it is. And so we wanted to be brief and not too wordy. But we also want it to be accurate. We want this vision to represent our congregation and align with their views and have everyone agree that this is what we want to do and what we want to be. So down below, you can see that there's our proposed vision. A diverse community navigating the challenges of your world. So as a downtown church, we're going to be right in the middle of diversity. We know that, and we actually expect that, and we welcome that. So right away, we want to state that we're a diverse community. And we also want to know that everyone brings into this church their own challenges from that diversity. And we want this to be the place that you can come in and have that help serve as a way to navigate those challenges through this congregation. So now that we've got the vision, a diverse community navigating the challenges of your world, what does that mean? How do we turn that into actionable items? Because otherwise it's just words on paper. So what we came up with, what we call some strategy points. These are the ways in which we want to take that vision and go forth and actually turn them into actions. The first one is welcome all. That's an action we can do. When we open these church, when we do open the church, either digitally or face-to-face, we want to welcome everybody. We want them to come into these doors, come into our community, come into our faith experience, and be welcome and feel welcome here. We also want to continue to encourage service. The history of this church has been built around missions and outreach, and we want to continue that. So when you go out and do your service activities, encourage that and use and apply that vision in those activities. And finally, it has to support our faith journey. So when you're out, everyone's got their own independent faith journeys. We also have a congregational journey. We want to make sure that this vision helps guide and direct those activities. And at the bottom there, you'll see something we're calling a tagline. One of the unexpected phrases that came out of our workshop activities was that, we were trying to define what a vision is, and this statement, an imperfect place to call home, came. And it just caught on with all of us. We really want people to understand and know FUMC as home. We want to have that level of comfort with everybody that comes into our congregation. And we want them to know that we're imperfect. We are working through the world. We're working through those challenges. We know we're not perfect, but we know we're going to try. We want you to know coming in here, you can call this home and know that we're going to try to continue to work to make it something everybody can accept. So after this vision in place, I'll turn it over to Bruce to speak more about our financial business.
Hello, friends and family of Ames First United Methodist Church. Thank you for this opportunity to visit with you this evening about our financial status. As we've talked earlier this evening, our mission is to make disciples of Jesus who serve beyond the walls. And this requires that we have a very strong and financially sound system of support to meet that mission statement. And we first of all want to thank all of you for your generosity that has made this possible, and will hopefully continue to make that possible in the future. Tonight, I'd like to visit with you about 4 different areas: our current building mortgage status, a couple of major trustee projects, our overall operating budget, and also a little bit about the foundation. Starting off with the building mortgage, a new addition that was put on back in 2013 at a cost of about $4.5 million. Thanks to so many of you that have contributed over those years since 2012, 2011, we've seen a substantial paying down of that cost. And as of today, we're sitting at with a refinanced mortgage that was done earlier this year, just under 4%. And our current principal stands at about $522,000. Our monthly payment for that mortgage is about $7,000. And based on the cash that we have right now, we can make those monthly payments through April 21. Actually, we continue to receive money from contributions coming in each month, so that that number actually goes out a little further than that based on the amount of contributions that we receive monthly. When we come to June of 2024, we will have a balloon payment of $256,000. Our goal and our hope is that we can pay that mortgage off before we get to that balloon payment. So I encourage you to consider that as we move forward in our stewardship efforts in the next several months. The trustees have a couple of major projects that are pending, totaling anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 in cost. One, the tuck pointing to do some repairs on the original building, and also replace windows in the East Education wing. The trustees have decided to defer most of that until 2022 because of our tight budget right now. They are doing some immediate needed work as possible. Thanks to many of you, we've had some contributions after our stewardship campaign last year, totaling about $22,500 that has come in, designated for these 2 major projects. So we hope to continue to help try to fund those, increase the funding for those projects over the next year or 2. Turning to our operating budget and how we're supporting our mission statement. Generally speaking, our monthly member giving is generally running behind our expenses right now. We are current with our expenses thanks to a Paycheck Protection Plan loan that we received earlier this year that's helped offset some of the losses in general income. So we're able to meet all of our expenses right now, or are maintaining our priorities. They're all paid, and our apportionments are on track to pay the 40% minimum, and with some hope, hoping we can increase that higher than that 40% minimum in the next several months. Our goals are to maintain that 40% level, and also to try and maintain our cash reserve, which is so critical in trying to even out some of our cash flows. We'll see in this next slide. This is the way our monthly income and expenses have been going for the past several months, going through the month of August. As you see, we started off the year fairly well. We started to see some drops in income as we moved into March and certainly into May. A lot of that probably due to the COVID situation and the closing of the church. So we're seeing some drops there. As we do a comparison back with expenses from last year in 2019, comparing the cumulative income and versus the expenses, we'll see that the 2020 income line is below that of 2019. And you'll also see that our expenses are also below, from 2020 are also below the 2019 level. So we have had some drop in expenses, as well as the due to the closing of the church. So we have some current concerns, and if this trend continues as it is right now, as we extend this line on out into the end of the year, we're going to be in may have some difficult. We're going to get through the remainder of the year probably okay due to our Paycheck Protection loan, but we have some concerns about what's going to happen in 2021. So let's moving on to our pledging and our stewardship effort in the coming months. We've also seen a downward trend over the past several years in the number of both the number of pledges and also the overall amount being pledged to support our operating budget. So there is some concern there. One interesting aspect is that for those people who did pledge this year, make a pledge to the church, those pledges are coming in pretty well, even with the closure of the church. Where we've seen probably the more significant drop is in the amount of money coming in from unpledged dollars. Those that may have were not able to make a pledge commitment, but said they would give as they could. So I think we're seeing some impacts possibly from the economic turndown from the COVID that's having some impact in that respect. But I do appreciate those of you that are trying to maintain your pledged amount throughout the year so far. As we move into our stewardship campaign in the next month in October, we'll ask you to consider how you can continue to maintain and possibly take a step up and increase your giving. I would hope that more people will be willing to make a pledge, but I know that in these uncertain economic times, it's difficult to try to forecast how you're going to be, what kind of economic situation you're going to be in 2021. So we understand that. But if at all possible, we really appreciate your help in trying to increase the pledges in the coming year. We also would encourage you to invite others to join our congregation. One other way to try to increase our income is to have more members participating in an active way in our church. So as we look at our short-term strategies for the remainder of the year, we again want to try to get that 40% minimum of apportionments paid. And we'd like to stretch that up to 65% if at all possible by the end of the year. We have thanks to our Paycheck Protection loan, we have a pretty good cash reserve right now. And we hope to try to maintain that through the end of the year. Hope we don't have to dip in too much more into the reserve because we'd like to have some significant amount of reserve as we move into 2021. And some of the other remainder short-term goals is that we want to continue to analyze our giving patterns. One thing I would point out that we have a revision that's happened on our website. We now have a give button on our website. You can go click on that give button and it will guide you into several different ways to make an online donation to the church. So check that out. That's fairly new within the last month or so. And we're striving to do everything we can to try to communicate and educate everyone in the congregation about what our current expenses are, our finances, our income and expenses. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch with anyone on the finance committee, and we'll be happy to visit with you at any time. Finally, our short-term goal is that we hope to try to meet our overall budget by the end of the year. Looking into more of a midterm and long-term strategies for our sustainable financial health. Again, our apportionment payments, we want to try to build those back up to eventually get up to that 100% level again. We're also going to try to maintain our stewardship efforts throughout the year to try to increase our level of pledging. Our 2021 campaign, we hope to have a successful year there again as we move into 2021, that we are supporting our operating budget, also looking at the mortgage and also the trustee major projects. We realize that if we have to prioritize, probably the biggest priority is going to be on an operating budget. That's what we need to maintain our operating staff and so forth. That's probably the more critical aspect. We'll be looking at trying to go to year-round stewardship as well. Our hope is that we can build that major project, trustee project fund up to $100,000 by 2022. And again, trying to maintain a healthy operating budget reserve to try to even out some of those cash flow ups and downs that we see during the course of the year. We want to try to make sure that our budget is adequately growing at the same time as our ministries are growing. We want to make sure that we're in alignment, that we are able to support our growing ministries and our outreach to both the congregation internally and our broader community externally. Foundation remains to be in a fairly healthy state. It has about a $1 million balance that's been maintained for several years. They are restricted by their bylaws and how much they can spend and what they can spend it for. So their goals are to maintain that 6% budget of outflow of money from the foundation, trying to align that with the priorities within the church. Also, as you see at the bottom, they have an indication of what they have spent over the past 5 years with a lot of support for scholarships and Appalachia Service Project. They've helped out a lot with investment certificates, repaying those, and have been significantly helpful in making some major building repairs. So again, I ask you that if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat box tonight during this live stream, and we'll be glad to try to answer those in the near future with a frequently asked question response that will get out to all the questions that may be coming in over the evening of tonight. So thank you again for this opportunity to visit with you, and look forward to hearing from you in the near future.
Hello again. And then there was COVID, the global pandemic that has swept around the world. The Church Council has been meeting every month as normal, and we met in December and January and February. We were part of our early discussions then. We had heard the information that you all did, that there was something coming. They weren't quite sure the impact, but by about March, we were pretty sure that it was here to stay, and its impact would be quite severe. And we were hearing how fast it was racing through the United States. It was here in Iowa, and we needed to prepare for that. So on March 18th, we formed an emergency church council meeting to discuss it and understand, and review what we thought was the impacts to us. And out of that, we decided to shut down the in-face worship experience in March. And this is based on the federal and local information we had, but we also knew that the information was coming daily, and it was changing daily. Where the hot spots were, where the trends were, what can you do to stay safe, what wasn't working. And so we realized that we needed to be more agile, and meeting once a month as a broader church council group would not suffice. So it was decided in that meeting to form this rapid response team, and it was a subset of the broader church council. And its goal was to meet weekly or daily as necessary, and actually have the authority to make decisions on how the church would operate, the plans, et cetera, to go forward. And so, as you know, literally everything we did do and how we did do it needed to shift. We couldn't continue to operate like we had. So part of the RRT team was to continually look at that and assess that. So things like going online. So we moved entirely online after we shut down in-face. COVID precautions were something we had to learn about. So things like social distancing became a word that everyone became familiar with. Hand sanitization, masks, et cetera. Even the word Zoom, used to be something you screamed when you stuck your head out a car window. It's now a real thing, and everyone is familiar with that now. Our missions had to continue. We had to align and shift those as well. So we went online with all of our activities from that point of view. A side effect actually of this was that it actually opened up opportunities for those that normally couldn't even travel to be face-to-face for some of these programs. They could actually now participate remotely through these video conferences. And then finally, communication. I mean, that's key through all of this. And we've known that. But the problem we've been faced with is the information is changing daily. So we had to change how we did that. So we've gone to very frequent church emails. We also updated our website to be more accommodating to this late-breaking information, to get that information up front and now close to everybody. So if you haven't been to our website recently, I would highly suggest you go look at it and peruse through the pages and familiarize yourself with how to navigate and interact with it. Now, the realities of COVID, what does that mean? Where are we at? So connecting and engaging with each other is something that's very difficult now. As you know, we started with our base plan of just shutting the building down. We didn't want visitors in and out. We didn't want our staff to be put at risk. We didn't want our congregation put at risk. So we shut it down. But we are anticipating, and we want to slowly reopen as the COVID allows us. which we're doing right now, by the way. Pastoral care has changed. Going face-to-face and meeting with some of our remote members just isn't possible anymore. So it's been a lot of calls, a lot of video chats with support from both members and staff. And as you know, also, we've done the live streaming, so that was new to our church. We've also just recently moved to an in-person, face-to-face 11 a.m. service, which went well as well. So I'd suggest people to participate in that going forward. But also safety protocols. We all had to become experts in safety protocols, something none of us even thought about before. And then, as I mentioned, the lifeblood of our church right now is this remote teleconferencing or remote videos. And we purchased 3 video rooms, or these Zoom rooms as they call them, so we could run 3 simultaneous meetings at once. And that's been a great success. And it really has helped us endure some of the pain that's impacted on us by this COVID virus. We've gone remote as well. But actually, one of the shifts we've done recently is as adult groups are comfortable, we are allowing them to come back into the building in small groups and with social distancing and all the protocols that come with that to do some on-site interaction. So if you're interested in that, please contact your leadership team for more information. And then again, communication. It's a lot of energy to stay on top of this. Multiple websites, multiple sources. You're hearing information every day from different people. We're trying to sort through that and stay in front of that. But the only way this works is if we can get that information out to you quickly as well. Normal snail mail, where we stick a letter in an envelope and put it in the post box, just isn't fast enough. So we need our church family to become familiar with the internet, become familiar with Facebook, familiar with email, etc. So please try to accommodate that. If you're struggling in that regard, please contact us as well. We can assist there too. Now the financials. It should be no surprise. I mean, the rest of the world and businesses have been impacted by the COVID, and FUMC, we're no different. We were impacted. The month we closed down face-to-face in March, we had an immediate drop in giving. I mean, it was pronounced. Fortunately, the government put out the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Loan. Of that, we received an $89,000 loan. And that actually carried us these last many months to get over the hump. And we believe it's going to keep us afloat for 2020. We're going to come in basically right at the break-even point there. And so that was a lifesaver. We had a little bit left over from that, so we believe we can continue to increase our cash reserve. We've been working on building that up a little bit every year over the last several years, and so we put a little bit in there. But the challenge here is if the giving model that we've seen over the last 6 months in this remote mode that we're in continues, we're going to have some real challenges going into 2021. So where do we go from here? One of the things we've seen over the past 5 years, and you probably saw and inferred from some of Bruce's information, is that we've had giving's been down for the last 5 years. It's kind of a stepwise down each of the last 5 years, as well as the number of giving units. Now with COVID, it's kind of exacerbated that whole problem, and we've seen more drastic drops. And so we need to make some decisions on what we're going to do and how we're going to operate going forward. And based on how we think we're going to come out of this on the other side for in the fiscal year of 21 coming forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now for a few more comments on that.
So yeah, next steps. The Church Council will be evaluating our 2020 ministry and how we did against some of the goals that we had. And then we will move right into setting goals for 2021 and having those prepared for the Charge Conference coming up in November. I would encourage each and every one of you to think about our direction and provide your feedback, whether that be to Matt, Carney, and Sharon, myself, any of our church leaders or staff. Your feedback is really, really important at a time like this, and will help us all be more bought into where we're going as a church. As you do that, we would ask that you would consider where you're at in your own faith journey and how you can take the next step. At the end of the day, that's really what we're all here for, is to move down that path and get more and more people involved and to build more disciples. With that always takes resources and specifically financial resources. So if we want to continue to deliver on the great and massive vision, purpose, and mission that we have here, we need everybody to think about how they can contribute to that through their skills, through their talents, and financially. And lastly, we would ask for your prayers. We're going to make some challenging decisions. We're going to have to think about things from a different perspective, probably over the next year or two here. The current environment has made things challenging for us. So we again ask for your input and prayers and get involved and support any way that you can. Thank you.
And isn't it wonderful, the quality of leadership that we have in this church? I am so impressed. This is the third time we've done this, and I'm just so impressed with our leaders. I want to remind you that we have our all-church conference coming up on November 19th, beginning at 6 p.m. It is going to be Zoom. In fact, we are hosting all the churches in Story County in different meetings with our Zoom rooms. We're the host. They won't know that, but it's our Zoom rooms. We're going to cluster with the Ames United Methodist churches that are in Ames, and we're going to have some time to learn from each other on Zoom. So if you're interested in participating in that, but you're not able to Zoom or you're not confident in Zooming, please let me know. Call the office and we'll get you connected with somebody that can help you get on Zoom. All church members have voice and vote. So not only will we be talking and interacting with other churches, United Methodist churches in Ames, we will also be presenting and voting on our goals for 2021, our budget for 2021, and some other things that we need to approve or change as we move forward, the leadership for 2021. Now, if you want to review the State of the Church conversation again, it will be uploaded to YouTube along with some slides that you'll be able to download. So never fear, we'll find that. And so, church, with the next slide, Mike, get ready for an Indiana Jones faith walk, because we are walking where we have never walked before, but we're not alone. We've got great partners, we've got great relationships in the community, and there is a way through this if we're willing to take some steps of faith. Thank you very much for your time. Please be sure you get those questions in on the chat or with an email into office@fumcames.org. Thank you for your attention, and good night.